Joy Harmon once made all of America pause for just a few seconds. A film scene, a body drenched in water, a moment later called unforgettable in cinematic history. But the woman behind that image almost disappeared from the very world that celebrated her. No major scandal, no loud collapse, just a quiet withdrawal. So what could be powerful enough to pull someone away from the spotlight at the very moment they had just touched it? Joy Harmon was not the kind of star built to last. She entered Hollywood with a beauty the camera could not look away from. Yet that very beauty became the frame that confined her to roles without depth. When audiences saw a symbol of sensuality, few realized that behind it was a young woman trying to find a real place, not on a poster, but within her own life. There are paths that do not end in failure, but in a choice to walk away. Joy Harmon stood between two worlds, one of easy yet hollow glamour, the other of a life unnoticed but truly her own. And when she turned her back on Hollywood, the real story began. No cameras, no applause, only a lingering question. Is fame worth the cost of losing oneself? Joy Harmon was born on May 1, 1938 in Flushing, New York, to Bernice and Homer Harmon. Some older records once listed her birth year incorrectly, but recent obituaries consistently confirm the timeline 1938 to 2026, marking her passing at the age of 87. By 1946, her family had moved to Connecticut, taking her away from the pace of New York City into a quieter environment. Yet her earliest encounters with lights and cameras had begun long before that transition. At just 3 years old, Joy stood in front of the Fox Movietone news camera, dressed in carefully prepared outfits and following precise instructions. Stand in the right spot, turn toward the light, hold an expression long enough for the lens to capture it. These short-filmed segments had no dialogue, no characters, but demanded repetition and precision. A movement performed again and again until it met the required standard. At an age when most children are not yet aware of being observed, she had already become accustomed to someone standing behind the lens, adjusting every small detail of how she appeared. Those newsreel clips did not function as acting roles. They belonged to a system of short, rapid filming for journalism and theatrical exhibition, where images were taken and used immediately after completion. Children appearing in them were not treated as characters, but as visual elements placed into the correct position. Joy did not learn acting through dialogue or extended scenes, but through standing still at the right moment, holding her face in the correct direction, allowing her small body to fit into a predefined frame. Repetition continued until no deviation remained, and with each repetition, the space for freedom in how she appeared in front of the camera narrowed further. Joy's academic pace moved faster than usual. She skipped 2 grades and graduated from Staples High School in Westport, Connecticut in 1956, while most of her peers remained within a more stable trajectory. The time available to shape a clear direction was shortened, and upon leaving school there was no defined academic path set before her. What had already become familiar, lights, camera angles, movements adjusted according to direction, did not disappear, but extended forward into the next phase of her life. An opportunity arrived that same year in its most concrete form. Joy had a small role in The Man in the Gray Flannel Suit. The screen time was brief and left no distinct mark, but it placed her inside the practical process of filmmaking. Step into position, wait for the cue, repeat an action until it meets the requirement. Lighting was adjusted, camera angles shifted, and the rhythm of shooting stretched across multiple takes. What had once occurred in fragmented childhood news segments no longer felt disconnected. They began to take shape within a controlled structure where every movement existed within a predetermined composition. In 1957, Joy stepped onto the Miss Connecticut stage and placed among the leading contestants, finishing as a 4th runner-up, tie. Not a central title, but enough to place her in a space of intensified observation. Lights were directed straight at her, The audience followed every movement. The judges held their gaze at every pause. There was no chance to redo, no editing. The way she stood, turned, and held expression. Everything had to be completed in that single moment. What had once been practiced in front of a camera during childhood was now repeated on a larger scale under clearer pressure. In 1958, the Broadway stage opened immediately after, with Make a Million, where Joy played Betty Phillips. The space narrowed behind the curtain but expanded completely in front. The audience followed every reaction, every pause, every line. A small deviation could not be erased. It happened and remained in the same instant. Holding the role no longer depended on camera angles or retakes, but on the ability to remain steady on stage throughout the duration of the performance. At the same time came extended tours across multiple cities with The Marriage Go-Round, The Solid Gold Cadillac, The Tender Trap, The Importance of Being Earnest, and later, Susan Slept Here. Traveling by day, performing at night, the rhythm repeated, yet no two evenings were identical. Audiences changed, reactions changed, but the role had to remain consistent from beginning to end. Susan Slept Here continued in the off-Broadway space, maintaining the same demand. No cut points, no second takes, only a single performance that existed once and ended the moment it was complete. It was during this period that another direction began to open from outside the stage, when Groucho Marx took notice of Joy Harmon. The movement did not come from a standout role, but from the way she held herself in live space, a capacity shaped through Broadway and touring. Her appearance on You Bet Your Life placed Joy into an entirely different form of pressure. There was no script to rely on, no editing rhythm to conceal mistakes. Everything unfolded in real time, under the guidance of someone who constantly pushed conversation beyond expectation. Joy did not enter as a character. She appeared as herself, and had to maintain rhythm while it was happening. Groucho was not looking for an actress to perform. He kept someone who could exist within the pauses between lines, unawkward, not rushing to fill silence, slow enough for the audience to observe, natural enough not to break the flow. After that appearance, Joy did not leave this space. When Tell It to Groucho went on air, she became a familiar presence, appearing regularly in each episode. No longer a passing guest, but a fixed part of how the show functioned. What unfolded did not remain confined to the studio. During those years, Joy and her sister were frequent visitors at Groucho's home in Beverly Hills, moving between two spaces, one filled with lights, cameras, and audiences, the other containing none of them. There was no script, no marked positions, no instructions to follow, yet it was not a fleeting presence either. They stayed long enough to no longer be considered guests. There were no signs of a Hollywood-style romantic narrative. The connection remained in another register, close, yet unnamed. In a system where most newcomers appeared briefly and then disappeared, being retained in both spaces, on air and off, did not create an obvious turning point, but extended the time she could remain within that operational orbit. It was here that a small but clear turning point occurred, not on screen, but in the name itself. Joy disappeared from the introduction, replaced by Patty Harmon at the request of a sponsor. The reason was not personal, but to avoid association with a competing brand. A name, the element most directly tied to presence, was altered without an accompanying choice. The cameras continued rolling, the show continued airing, the audience continued watching, but the identity presented to them was no longer intact. This change did not interrupt the work. On the contrary, it occurred precisely as her frequency of appearances increased. Joy continued to hold rhythm, continued to stand in her familiar position, continued to appear long enough to become inseparable from the program. Yet within that process, a boundary became clearer. Her presence was retained, but only through conditions already set, both in the structure of the show and even in the way her name was allowed to exist. The door to Hollywood opened from that very repetition, not through a major role, but through a face and a name appearing long enough to no longer be overlooked. But the moment she stepped through that door, the path ahead was no longer entirely hers. It was shaped by what the system chose to keep and what it decided to change. The rhythm of television appearances brought Joy Harmon into the zone of recognition, but cinema was where she was held in a clearer way. In 1963, Under the Yum Yum Tree placed her in a small role within the sitcom-style comedy genre, where everything was built around the rhythm of scenes rather than a character's journey. The screen time was not long and did not create a specific mark, but the way the camera approached her was defined very early. Hold the face long enough, keep the body in the right position within the light, complete an image before moving on to another part of the story. Moving into Roustabout, 1964, the scale of production expanded, the space became more crowded, the rhythm faster, and each shot was separated according to its own schedule. The character no longer followed a straight line from beginning to end, but was broken into pieces and assembled again after filming. Joy had to step into each fragment as though they belonged to the same flow, even though in reality they were filmed separately. When the film was completed, what remained on screen was not a process of development, but a sequence of images arranged according to the viewer's gaze. In 1965, the frequency of work increased clearly with One Way Wahine, Young Dillinger, and The Loved One. Genres shifted constantly, from beach films to crime and then social satire. But the way Joy was placed within the frame kept one thing in common: appear enough to be seen, then leave before becoming the center of the story. There was no shortage of roles, but no role lasted long enough to create a clear developmental trajectory. And that continuity itself began to create a form of repetition that was difficult to recognize while it was happening. The point of concentration appeared in Village of the Giants, 1965, when the role of Mary pushed Joy Harmon's image beyond familiar proportions. The film used layered filming techniques and exaggerated sets to create the sensation of the body suddenly growing larger, and in those frames, Mary no longer existed within the space. She occupied it. The camera's positioning did not seek balance with other characters. It held Joy at the center, allowing everything else to shrink around her. The scene in which she holds Johnny Crawford and hangs him from part of her bikini costume was carried out as a simple action during filming. Standing position, hand placement, direction of gaze, rhythm of holding the frame. There was no dialogue, no psychological development attached to it. The crew repeated the movement until the camera angle and scale met the requirement. When the scene was completed, it had not been built to resolve conflict or push the story forward. But when it appeared on screen, it no longer remained within its original logic. The audience did not follow the progression. They stopped at the image. There, a clear shift took place. What had previously appeared in scattered form, holding the face, holding the body, holding the gaze, was gathered into a single point. Mary did not need to develop in order to be remembered. The image had already completed its function the moment it appeared. It did not depend on the rest of the film, did not need to connect with what happened before or after. As the film continued, that scene stood still as a separate piece. The chain of roles during this period did not bring major nominations or awards, and the film's revenues remained at the stable level of popular entertainment, enough for the projects to keep operating, and enough for Joy to maintain a continuous working rhythm. There was no collapse, nor was there a leap forward. What happened belonged to another form. Roles came steadily, but followed the same direction. Opportunities to appear increased, but the range of performance did not expand. As the films followed one another, the distance between appearing and developing did not disappear. It simply stretched out, repeating through each project, enough to form a stable path that became difficult to change once she had moved deeper inside it. Between film shoots, television studios operated at a different rhythm, faster and tighter. Sets were already built, lighting fixed, multiple cameras placed at different angles to capture the same scene. When her turn came, Joy stepped into the marked position, stood within the light, and waited for the cue. The script was divided into short sections. The scene began. Dialogue moved quickly, and the actors kept rhythm to match the reactions of the studio audience. Laughter rose at points that had already been set. When the scene ended, the camera did not linger. The next section began almost immediately. Each appearance fit neatly inside a defined amount of time. When the camera shifted to another storyline, Joy left her position and stood outside the frame. What had just happened did not remain on the studio floor. It existed only in the completed recording. Through many shoots like that, the working rhythm stayed the same. A scene began, was completed, and ended within its own duration. When the episode aired, the audience saw one brief part of a larger story, then moved on to another part. That same rhythm continued across many different series. Shooting schedules filled the gaps between film projects. Joy Harmon appeared continuously in familiar programs of the 1960s. Batman, Gidget, Bewitched, The Monkees, The Beverly Hillbillies, and The Odd Couple. At the same time, other appearances connected into that flow. My Three Sons, Burke's Law, Occasional Wife, That Girl, each program with its own space and rhythm, but keeping the same mode of operation. One of the roles with clearer screen time appeared in Never Too Young, where she played Tony Dow's girlfriend. No longer just a single entrance and exit within the same episode, this character kept Joy in the frame longer, enough to create a connecting line rather than isolated points of appearance. But even when the duration lasted longer, the way the character was positioned did not change, clearly present, yet not becoming the main axis of the story. Each time she entered a studio, it was another structure: pre-built sets, fixed lighting, clearly divided scripts, hurried shooting rhythm. Actors stepped in, received direction, held their positions so the multi-camera setup could capture them fully, completed the scene at the right pace, then moved to the next part. The space was familiar, but the time given to each appearance was always limited. The character was introduced quickly, fulfilled her function, then withdrew from the story before having the chance to expand further. The dense frequency created a feeling of continuous presence. Her face gradually became familiar to television audiences. Her name appeared regularly on broadcast schedules. The work was stable, the rhythm of labor steady through each week and each season. But as the episodes followed one another, a boundary slowly appeared within the very way the roles were distributed. Each appearance was a closed stopping point, not accumulating into a long trajectory. The consecutive appearances did not lead to a transition. They kept Joy in a state of always being present, but did not push her into another position. Each studio closed in the same way. The scene finished, the lights turned off, the crew moved on to the next project, leaving behind a chain of separate roles, enough to be recognized, but not enough to change the way she was seen. The years before that had brought Joy Harmon close to the center, but not quite into it. Cool Hand. Luke appeared in that context, not as a major role, but as a small part outside the main axis of the story. Her character was called Lucille, sometimes credited simply as the girl. No dialogue, no development arc, no passage through any conflict. A short scene, separated from the film's main flow, placed there like a pause. The casting process defined the approach very clearly from the beginning. Her agent directed her to the audition with a specific requirement: to appear in a bikini when meeting Paul Newman and director Stuart Rosenberg. Not to build a character in the usual way, but to test something more direct: the way her image held the frame. During that meeting, Newman noticed her blue eyes, a small detail but enough to preserve the first impression in a casting process that did not take long. The set was arranged with a different level of control from what she had experienced before. A 1941 DeSoto was placed in harsh sunlight, the setting simple with few distracting elements. Every interaction was narrowed, attention pulled toward a single point. Each movement was specifically directed: how to rub the soap onto the glass, how to hold the hose, the angle of the body, the way her gaze moved with each beat. One motion was repeated again and again, each time adjusting a small detail until the image reached the exact rhythm the director needed. That space was tightened in another way as well. According to Joy's later recollection, the wives and girlfriends of the male actors were not allowed on set, and the actors in the scene barely spoke to her. The distance existed not only inside the frame, but outside it too. She stood on one side of the shot, the men on the other, and every gaze had to pass through the empty space between them. When the camera rolled, that distance did not disappear. It was preserved, stretched through each movement, stepping into position, holding the hose, rubbing the soap, looking in the direction she had been given. During the process, Joy was not performing in the way the scene would later be understood. She did exactly what was asked, completed each movement, repeated it when necessary, then left her position when the director cut. When the film was edited together, what appeared on screen no longer matched the way it had been made. The image retained another meaning, separated from the process that had created it. When the film was completed, this scene was not at the center of the structure, yet it created a clear stopping point in the viewer's experience. The rhythm of the film slowed. The gaze focused on one place and stayed there longer than storytelling required. An image separated from the main flow stood still long enough that it no longer needed to rely on the rest of the film. After the premiere, the memory of the film did not open through the whole story, but contracted around that moment. The years of work before it, stage, television, the roles that followed one after another, did not disappear, but they no longer appeared at the same time in the way she was mentioned. That brief, wordless image continued to be repeated in articles, in later references to the film, until it no longer needed what came before or after in order to exist. When a moment holds its place for too long, the rest of a career begins to recede without any clear stopping point. There was no award attached to it, no clear transition opening afterward. Work still continued, roles still appeared, filming schedules did not stop. But each time she entered a new project, the starting point remained the same, and the ending point was no different. The moment that brought her into broad recognition did not lead to a corresponding change in how she was cast. The image stayed in one place. The work continued somewhere else. Those two trajectories no longer met. Here, the contradiction appeared more clearly than at any earlier stage. One moment placed Joy Harmon in a position of wide recognition, but that very moment did not change how she was seen throughout the rest of her career. The image stood still. The path behind it did not move in the same direction. After Cool Hand, Luke, Joy Harmon's work schedule did not become empty. In 1969, she appeared on the set of Angel in My Pocket. Shooting days were divided into short scenes, each contained within a few pages of script. Step into position, run the lines, stay within the light, leave the frame when the director called cut. The scene was completed cleanly, fulfilling its function within the story. When edited, Joy's appearance passed quickly, not holding the viewer longer than the film's necessary rhythm. The work moved on. No trace remained. In the early 1970s, television continued to call her name. Love, American Style, 1972, divided each episode into multiple short stories. Joy entered one segment, completed it within a few minutes, and withdrew before the narrative shifted to another line. On The Odd Couple that same year, the filming space was fixed, dialogue moved quickly, and the audience laughed on cue. Joy stood on her mark, received the line, delivered the line, kept rhythm with her co-stars, and the scene closed exactly when the laughter peaked. These appearances followed one another, the shooting schedule full, but each one closed within the same episode, not extending into the next week. The dense rhythm did not create a transition. At the script table, the role names changed from project to project. The way she was placed within the frame did not. In front of the camera, Joy fulfilled every requirement. Step into the correct position, hold the gaze, complete the scene's rhythm. Behind the camera, the next projects arrived in the same form. Short roles, concise screen time, early stopping points. The repetition was not loud, but it was present everywhere. The same type of appearance, the same way of leaving. In 1973, Thicker Than Water became her final appearance. The set operated as before: lights, marked positions, dialogue, rhythm, the cut of the scene. The role closed cleanly, not creating a point of separation from the rest. When she left the set, the chain of work ended in the same manner. No public milestone, no expanded project to move into another direction. The difficulty of this period did not lie in a lack of work, but in its unchanging form. Joy still appeared regularly on screen, but each appearance was only enough to maintain rhythm, not enough to extend it. What she did on set was always precise. What remained after broadcast was always brief. The distance between being seen and being retained did not narrow. It remained the same through each role, through each episode, until no further roles came. Thicker Than Water, 1973, closed the sequence of Joy Harmon's roles. The filming schedule no longer continued, new projects did not appear, the familiar working rhythm stopped without the need for an official announcement. The set, the makeup room, the script readings before shooting moved out of her daily orbit, not through a major event, but simply by no longer repeating. The shift in Joy Harmon's life did not occur as an abrupt turn. Her family had already existed within that orbit, only not occupying the central position. In 1968, she married Jeff Gorson, a film editor and producer working in Los Angeles, associated with projects such as Tron and Quantum Leap. This relationship formed within the very environment in which she was working: film sets, editing rooms, spaces where the work continued even after the camera had stopped. The difference between them did not lie in distance, but in the way they worked. Joy stood in front of the camera, completing scenes within short and clearly defined periods. Jeff Gorson worked behind it, in the editing room, where a film was assembled from separate fragments. One side ended when the director called cut, the other began from what had just been recorded. These two rhythms did not overlap, yet met at a shared point: a finished product. Within that intersection, the relationship was formed and sustained, without the need for a public image to define it. 3 children followed in the years after: Jamie Gorson, Julie Gorson, and Jason Gorson. Family life operated alongside her acting work in the early period, dividing time in uneven ways. Days on set alternated with days at home, 2 spaces that did not overlap but were not entirely separate. When her on-screen career gradually closed in the early 1970s, the rest of life did not need to be built from the beginning. It was already there, waiting to be placed at the center. The rhythm of daily life shifted into another form, no longer dependent on filming schedules or broadcast times. Family became the central axis, extending across many years in a state of stability. Jason Gorson later followed a path close to his father's environment, working as an actor and film editor. Another child spent time working at Walt Disney Studios, maintaining a connection to the entertainment industry, but not in front of the camera. The family expanded with 9 grandchildren, creating a structure that extended beyond the period of artistic activity. Their marriage lasted more than 3 decades, ending in 2001. There was no public dispute, no attention-drawing event. The ending unfolded in the same way it had existed, quiet, without forming a clear breaking point. There is no record of major tragedies or conflicts presented to the public. This part of life did not contain a climax in the usual sense, no single moment to explain the entire story. Yet it is precisely the absence of major upheavals that creates another kind of emotional resonance. A marriage spanning decades, a family maintained across many phases, then closing without the need for a major event to mark it. Nothing was clearly broken, It was simply time passing, holding everything in a stable state long enough that when it ended, no grand reason was required to explain it. After leaving the screen, Joy Harmon did not immediately separate from the production environment. Work behind the camera at Walt Disney Studios kept her within the same system, but in a different position. No longer under direct lighting, no longer measured by screen time. Instead, there were working days that stretched across multiple technical stages, where a film was completed without the need for on-screen presence. It was within that space that another movement began to form in a very small way. In the area serving the film crews, Joy brought homemade baked goods, cakes, cheesecakes, items prepared at home. At first, it was only sharing within a narrow circle, among people working together through long shooting days. But the response did not stop at the level of courtesy. The cakes were remembered, requests were made to bring more, and they gradually became a familiar part of the backstage rhythm. Not a major decision, but a habit repeated long enough to create a new direction. The family became involved in that process once the rhythm of on-screen work had stopped. Bringing baked goods to the set no longer remained a simple act of sharing among acquaintances. Recipes were kept, repeated, then increased according to specific demands. Orders did not arrive all at once, but appeared sporadically. One person tried, another asked, a production needed more, until the family kitchen could no longer contain the work in its original form. The expansion did not begin with a clear decision. Her children took on specific roles, finding locations, reorganizing preparation methods, moving what had once taken place in a family space into a setting that could be maintained more consistently. When the scale outgrew the kitchen, it did not immediately change in nature. The recipes remained the same, the methods remained the same, but the space had changed. Even the next generation stepped into that rhythm, with a grandson participating in deliveries, small movements repeated daily, sustaining the work without altering how it had begun. In 2003, Aunt Joy's Cakes was established in Burbank, a small space, concrete work, preparing ingredients, completing each order, delivering to film crews and television productions in the area. The connection to the entertainment industry did not disappear. It simply shifted position. Joy no longer appeared within the frame, but she was still present in those same environments, not to be seen, but to complete another part of the work. In the years that followed, this journey was revisited in another way through the short documentary From Cheesecake to Cheesecake. The title did not only refer to baking, but evoked a clearer transition. From the cheesecake image of Hollywood, frames emphasizing physical appearance, to actual cakes made by hand, existing outside the lens. A form of transformation that did not need explanation, yet was clear when placed side by side. The work at the bakery continued for many years, maintaining a rhythm different from before. No scripts or camera angles, each completed product became a definitive endpoint, requiring no retake, no editing. Familiar movements, preparing ingredients, completing each order, delivering them, repeated long enough to form their own structure. Within that rhythm, another part of life was preserved, not through images, but through what was made and continued to exist. Her living space was in Shadow Hills, north of Los Angeles, where the distance from the city was enough to maintain a separate rhythm. Beyond work, she spent time on things unrelated to the entertainment industry, especially animals. Feeding wildlife, small movements taking place in a space without audience, without cameras, continued to repeat in a steady manner, without needing to be recorded in order to exist. Traces of the past did not completely disappear. Letters from audiences continued to arrive, regularly, from people who remembered a very specific image on screen. The letters did not expand to her entire career, did not mention other roles. They returned to a single moment. Joy opened each envelope, read, signed photographs, and sent them back. A repeated action, extended over time, maintaining a connection that no longer existed in the same space as what had created it. The work did not stop immediately, but slowed as the body could no longer keep pace with the rhythm maintained for many years. Orders were still completed, but the intervals between them grew longer. Hospitalization was not separate from that process, but existed within it, a point where continuation no longer proceeded as before. Recovery plans were set as a familiar extension, but did not last long enough to return. The final days did not unfold as a separate dramatic event. The bakery was still there, the work was still there, the familiar people within the production environment were still very close. When pneumonia forced her out of that rhythm, the interruption did not resemble a prepared ending, but rather a working day that could not be returned to and completed. A campaign to support medical expenses appeared in that gap, bringing the final part of her life back to very concrete elements: hospital, costs, family, and a small community that recognized her not only through the screen, but through what she had made by hand over many years. On April 14, 2026, Joy Harmon passed away at her home in Los Angeles. Her family confirmed that she left peacefully, surrounded by loved ones. There was no staged final scene, no line preserved. A straight line extended from the early years in front of the camera, through the roles, through a single moment that remained longer than the rest, then moved into another space, where everything continued without needing to be seen. Joy Harmon's legacy does not spread across the number of roles she played, nor is it defined through awards or rankings. It concentrates on a single point, a moment strong enough to separate itself from everything else. The car washing scene in Cool Hand Luke does not only exist within the film, it exists outside it, recalled, extracted, and preserved in public memory as an independent image. Over time, this scene did not remain confined to the scope of a specific film. It has been included in lists and compilations about popular cinema, including mentions in rankings of memorable sensual moments of 1960s Hollywood. Not because the role had a complex structure, but because the image reached a level of recognition strong enough to detach from its original context. A short, wordless scene, yet repeated more than most of what surrounds it. What is notable does not lie in the scene itself, but in the way it operates over time. When the film ends, many other details move along with the narrative. That scene does not. It stops, held in articles, in audience memory, in the way the film is later referenced. A role not built to become central, instead becomes the part that is retained the longest. In the context of 1960s Hollywood, where many actresses were positioned through visual imagery before being given character depth, Joy Harmon's case is not an exception, but a clear example. She belongs to a generation often referred to as the glamour girls of cinema, faces capable of holding the frame, creating immediate impact, yet often kept by the system at that very point. A strong on-screen presence did not always come with opportunities to expand a role. In Joy's case, this did not occur as a disruption, but as an extended state, an image strong enough to exist independently, yet not accompanied by a corresponding change in how she was cast. No major awards, no confirming titles, yet still a clear place in public memory. Retained not because of the entirety of her career, but because of a single moment that was not replaced. Joy Harmon's life did not follow the familiar arc of rise and decline. It moved in another way, a long journey in which one single moment remained longer than everything that accompanied it. The years of work in front of the camera, the sequence of roles, the appearances across television and film, all of them existed, but were not retained in the same way. The rest of her life unfolded outside the spotlight. Family, behind the camera work, the years in the bakery, letters from audiences, everything continued in a different rhythm without needing to be recorded in order to exist. One trajectory came to a stop. Another continued, extending through time without a clear point of division between the two. What is retained is not distributed evenly across the entire journey. It contracts around a single point, repeated long enough to replace the rest. The years of work, the succession of roles, the appearances in front of the camera still exist, but do not accompany that image in public memory. When one moment stands still long enough, it is not only remembered, it begins to replace what once accompanied it. And when looking back, what remains does not lie in the quantity of what was done, but in the way memory holds on to a single image long enough for the rest to recede. When a person is remembered only through one moment, is that the limit of a journey, or is it the way memory chooses to keep what it cannot forget?